You are Sergeant Kellian Vross of the Cadian 117th, and you should have died 17 seconds ago. The greenskin's chopper was descending toward your neck. You saw your reflection in the crude blade, distorted and small, saw your own eyes widening in that final, terrible recognition that comes when the mind accepts what the body hasn't yet felt. You had time to notice details that shouldn't matter. The way the orc's weapon was chipped along one edge, probably from cleaving through someone else's collarbone. The way the creature's breath smelled of fungus and burning promethium. The way the mud beneath you was still warm from the trooper who'd been lying there before you, before the heavy bolter fire turned him into something that couldn't be called a body anymore. And then the orc simply stopped, froze mid-swing like a vid-capture frozen at its most crucial frame. The blade hung there, trembling slightly, close enough that you could see the microscopic scratches in the metal, close enough that the air displacement ruffled your hair. You lay there in the mud, waiting for your heart to remember how to beat, while around you the battle continued its grinding, screaming symphony of death. But not for you. Never for you anymore. The orc's head tilted, slowly, mechanically, like a servitor receiving new programming. Its red eyes, which had been locked on you with that single-minded fury that makes greenskin so terrifying, shifted focus. Not to something beside you, not to some new threat, to something above you, around you. Something you couldn't see, but that you felt in the way your skin suddenly prickled, the way the air seemed to thicken with presence. Then the orc lowered its weapon, turned, and walked away, just walked away. Through the killing field, through the las fire and the explosions, stepping over the bodies of its own kind, it retreated. You watched it go, your mind struggling to process what you just witnessed, trying to fit it into the familiar patterns of combat, of cause and effect, of the way the universe is supposed to work. It didn't fit. You lay there for another 30 seconds. You counted them, each one stretching like hours, before you could move. Your limbs felt disconnected from your brain, puppet strings cut and tangled. When you finally stood, your legs shaking so badly you had to brace against the trench wall, you noticed something that made your stomach drop. The mud around you, in a perfect circle, maybe 2 meters in diameter, was undisturbed by shrapnel. Every other square centimeter of the trench was pockmarked with fresh impact craters, but not where you'd been lying. The circle was so geometrically precise it looked drawn with a compass. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, you've tried to tell yourself stories. The Imperium is vast beyond comprehension. Strange things happen. Miracles occur. The Emperor protects his faithful, and you've always been faithful, haven't you? You pray the liturgies. You maintain your weapon. You follow orders without question. Perhaps you've earned some small measure of divine intervention. But this isn't intervention. This is something else. The incident started small, easy to dismiss. A stray round that should have taken your head, instead punching through the space where you'd been standing a half-second before, but you can't remember deciding to move. A collapsing building during the artillery barrage that buried half your squad but left you in a perfect pocket of stability, standing unharmed while around you men screamed beneath tons of rockcrete. A sniper's las beam that curved, and you know this is impossible. You know light doesn't bend like that. Around your silhouette to kill the trooper behind you instead. Trooper Marquis. He'd been standing behind you for cover. You heard him fall, heard the wet sound of superheated flesh, but you didn't turn around. Couldn't. Because you'd seen the beam curve, seen physics become a suggestion rather than a law, and your mind was too busy trying to deny what your eyes had witnessed. That was the first death you remember clearly. Not the first death because of you. You understand that now in retrospect, but the first one you couldn't rationalize away. Marquis had a daughter back on Cadian. He talked about her constantly. Showed anyone who'd listened the same worn pic capture of a little girl with his eyes and his wife's smile. You'd seen that pic capture so many times you knew every detail. The way the girl's left front tooth was slightly crooked. The way her hair was braided with ribbons that were probably some color you couldn't determine from the faded image. You didn't attend his battlefield burial. Couldn't bear to see the pic capture placed on the makeshift grave marker, that smile looking up at the uncaring sky. Because you knew Even then, even before you admitted it to yourself, that he died for you, in your place. So you could continue breathing, continue existing, continue being kept. The guilt tastes like copper, like blood that should be yours but isn't. Your best friend, Corvin, was next, or at least he was the first one you couldn't deny. You'd known Corvin since basic training. He was the one who taught you how to field strip a lasgun in under 30 seconds. The one who got drunk with you the night before your first deployment and admitted he was terrified. And you admitted it too, and somehow that shared terror made you both feel braver. The one who saved your life during the Orc assault on Firebase Theta by dragging you into cover while you were too stunned from a nearby explosion to move. You joked about it afterward. "Guess I owe you one," you'd said. "Don't worry," he'd replied, grinning that crooked grin of his. "I'll collect eventually." He never got the chance. It happened during a routine patrol. Routine, what a grotesque word to use in a war zone, but that's what they called it. A sweep through the ruins of Hive Tertius, checking for remaining Orc presence. Your squad was moving through what used to be a residential block, now just shattered walls and twisted metal. Corvin was on point. You were 3 meters behind him, standard formation. The Orc was hiding in the rubble, juvenile, probably separated from its pack but still dangerous. It burst from cover with that characteristic bellowing roar, crude slugga raised. You saw it happening, saw the muzzle flash. Saw Corvin start to turn, too slow, always too slow when it matters. And you saw the rounds curve. 3 solid slugs, visible in the dust-choked air, their trajectories bending like light through water. They should have punched through the Orc's own skull. The angle was impossible for them to hit anything else. But they curved, arced through space in a path that violated every law of ballistics you'd ever been taught. They hit Corvin in the chest, center mass. He went down hard, blood already bubbling from his lips. You killed the Orc. Don't remember doing it, don't remember raising your lasgun or pulling the trigger, but afterward it was dead and your weapon was hot and Corvin was dying in your arms. "Vross," he choked out, blood on his teeth. What happened?" You couldn't answer. How do you explain that you just watched reality edit itself? That the universe had decided his death was preferable to yours? Tell my sister." He started but didn't finish. His eyes went distant, focusing on something beyond the ruined sky above. You held him until he stopped breathing. Until his blood stopped being warm. Until the rest of the squad found you and had to physically pull you away because you wouldn't let go. That night, alone in your tent, you threw up until there was nothing left but bile. And even then you kept heaving, your body trying to purge something that couldn't be expelled. Because you understood, finally, irrevocably, you weren't lucky. You were being kept. Your squad mates began to notice. They didn't say anything at first. Soldiers are superstitious by nature. You wear your lucky charm, you follow your pre-battle rituals. You don't talk about going home because that's how you jinx it. Everyone knows someone who's improbably lucky, who walks through fire and somehow never gets burned. But this was different. This was wrong. It started with the small things. During mess, you'd notice the empty seats around you growing, forming a buffer zone that expanded gradually over days and weeks. In the trenches, troopers would volunteer for the most dangerous positions rather than stand next to you. When command assigned you to a squad, you'd see the way their faces fell, the way they'd exchange glances that said everything words couldn't. No one wanted to be near the lucky sergeant. Because proximity to luck that strong meant you were standing in the shadow of something vast, and shadows that size are cast by things you don't want to see. Sergeant Hallies was the first to say it out loud. She cornered you after a battle, another battle where your squad took 70% casualties and you walked away without a scratch. She was older than you, a veteran of campaigns you'd only heard stories about, with scars that formed a roadmap of decades of service. Her eyes were hard in the way that only comes from seeing too much death and somehow continuing anyway. "You need to request a transfer," she said. No preamble, no softening of the blow. "What?" "You're cursed, Vross. I don't know how, I don't know why, but you're carrying something, and it's killing everyone around you." She stepped closer and you saw something in her expression you'd never seen before, fear, not of the enemy, of you. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know bad luck when I see it. You're the opposite of bad luck, and that's worse. Do you understand? That's worse. I can't control. I know you can't, she interrupted. That's why you need to leave, before there's no one left. You requested the transfer that night. Transfer to a penal legion, to a suicide squad, to anywhere that would take you away from these people you were killing through the simple act of existing near them. The request was denied. You tried again, and again, 5 times in 2 weeks, every time denied. The 6th time you found the request data slate back in your footlocker, unsigned, unprocessed, with small droplets of something on the corner, something that might have been wax, might have been blood, might have been both. The substance was still warm when you touched it, and it left a residue on your fingers that smelled like roses and copper. Roses. You were on a world where the native flora was toxic fungus and thorned grasses that could cut through flak armor. A world where roses had never existed, where the very concept of such a delicate, useless flower was absurd. But you knew that smell, and that night in the darkness of your tent, you heard it for the first time clearly. Humming. Not a sound exactly. More like the memory of sound, or the idea of sound, existing in the space between your thoughts. It had rhythm, almost musical, almost pleasant. It sounded pleased, content. And within it, like finding a pattern in static, you understood one word. Mine. You tried to test it, had to. Because the alternative was accepting that you were the center of something impossible, something that violated every article of faith you'd been raised with, every principle of the universe as you understood it. That night, you walked into no man's land. Alone. Without your helmet. Without your flak armor. Just your fatigues and your faith that you were wrong, that you'd been seeing patterns where none existed, that the universe still operated on the rules you'd learned. The orcs had sentries. You could hear them in the darkness, their guttural language carrying across the wasteland. You walked toward the sounds, making no effort to hide your approach. Your footsteps crunched on the rocky ground, loud enough to wake the dead. An orc sentry spotted you. You saw its silhouette rise from behind cover, saw it raise its weapon. You stopped walking, stood still, waited, it fired. You closed your eyes, ready for the impact. The round went wide by meters. As if the orc had never fired a weapon before, had forgotten which end the bullets came from. You opened your eyes. The orc was staring at its slugger, confused. It fired again. Another miss, this one even wider. You walked closer. The orc saw you coming and did something you'd never seen an orc do before. It ran. This creature, built for war, programmed by its fungal genetics to love violence above all else, turned and fled from an unarmed human walking slowly across open ground. You stood there in no man's land, in the killing zone between 2 armies, and you laughed. It was not a sane sound. You laughed until you couldn't breathe, until tears ran down your face, until you collapsed to your knees on the hard ground. You laughed because the universe had just proven that your will was irrelevant, that your choices didn't matter, that something had decided you would live and there was absolutely nothing you could do about it. You laughed because the alternative was screaming. When you finally stopped, when the laughter died in your throat and left only a hollow ache, you spoke aloud to the darkness. What do you want from me? The humming grew louder, not in your ears, in your bones, in your soul. It resonated through you like you were an instrument being played by invisible hands. And you knew with terrible certainty that whatever was keeping you alive, it had heard you. It had always heard you. It just didn't care what you wanted. It only cared what it wanted, and what it wanted was you. The miracle of the Prometheum fire happened 3 days later. A supply depot explosion. Sabotage, probably. Orc commandos are crude but effective. The Prometheum storage tanks went up like a miniature sun, a fireball that rose 200 meters into the ash-choked sky. Your squad was 30 meters from the blast radius. You should have vaporized instantly. The heat alone should have flash-cooked you in your armor, turned you into superheated steam in the nanosecond before the shockwave tore apart your atoms. You remember the light, brighter than anything you'd ever seen, so bright it burned through your closed eyelids and seared itself into your retinas. You remember the sound, not hearing it but feeling it, a pressure wave that seemed to compress your entire body. You remember the smell of burning everything, the acrid stench of combusting chemicals and melting metal and vaporized flesh. And then, nothing. You opened your eyes. You were standing exactly where you'd been, arms still raised in that useless instinct to shield your face. Around you, the world was on fire. The ground was scorched black. The supply depot was a crater. Your squad mates were. You didn't look at what was left of them. Couldn't. Because they were shapes now, not people. Shadows burned into the ground like the atomic shadows from ancient Terra, permanent silhouettes marking where human beings had been before they stopped being anything at all. All of them, except you. You stood in a perfect circle of untouched ground. The dirt beneath your feet wasn't even warm. Your uniform wasn't singed. Your hair wasn't burned. You were pristine, preserved, kept, while around you 23 soldiers had been erased from existence. You fell to your knees and tried to pray. The words wouldn't come. How do you pray when a miracle has just occurred and you know it wasn't the God Emperor who saved you? That's when you notice the smell. Your skin, your uniform, your hair, everything smelled wrong. Not like smoke or chemicals or burned flesh. Like roses, sweet and cloying and impossible. Like walking through a garden that had no right to exist, that violated the very nature of this dead, toxic world. And copper. Under the roses, the metallic tang of fresh blood. The smell lasted for days. You scrubbed your skin raw trying to remove it, used up your entire water ration, borrowed chemical cleansers from the tech priests. Nothing worked. The smell faded on its own, gradually, like something that had marked you and could afford to be patient. Because it wasn't going anywhere, and neither were you. The mercy that isn't came 2 weeks afterward, a night raid. Orcs again. They're endless on this world, sprouting from the ground like toxic mushrooms, multiplying faster than you can kill them. Your unit was dug in at the edge of a ruined manufactorum, trying to hold a supply line that was already compromised, but that command insisted was vital. You were in a foxhole alone. No one would share a position with you anymore. You'd stopped asking. The orc came over the trench lip silently as a 300-pound fungal monster can move. You saw it in the moment before it would have killed you. A young one, eyes bright with bloodlust, crude blade already swinging toward your neck. You didn't move, didn't raise your weapon. What would be the point? The orc's finger tightened on the trigger of its slugger. You watched it happen in that slowed-down clarity that comes during near-death moments, every detail crystalline and perfect. The trigger's movement. The hammer falling, the flash of ignition in the chamber, the round fired. You saw it leave the barrel, saw it cross the meter of space between you and the orc. Saw it. Bend, curve, reverse. The round entered the orc's skull from the wrong direction. Through the back of its head, exiting through its right eye in a spray of fungal tissue and black blood. The physics of it were impossible. The trajectory was impossible. Bullets don't do that. Reality doesn't work that way, except when it does. The orc fell backward, dead before it hit the ground. You sat in your foxhole, weapon unfired, and stared at the corpse. But that wasn't the mercy that wasn't. The mercy was what you saw in the orc's eye in the instant before death. It wasn't looking at you. It was looking at something behind you, above you, around you. And in that eye, not the eye that was about to explode, but the one that was still intact, the one that would carry its final sight into whatever afterlife orcs have, you saw terror. Not the terror of death. Orcs don't fear death. They love it. This was the terror of something worse than death. The terror of being seen by something that should never see. Something too vast, too incomprehensible, too wrong to process. And you understood, the orc had glimpsed what was protecting you, what was keeping you. And in that glimpse, it had understood that death would be mercy compared to the attention of that thing. You wanted to feel bad about the orc's death. Wanted to feel something, guilt or satisfaction, or at least acknowledgement that a life had ended because of you. But all you felt was cold. Cold and the terrible suspicion that the orc had been the lucky one. In the quiet spaces between battles, and there are always quiet spaces, even in war, moments where the killing pauses to catch its breath, you hear the humming. It's not always present, or maybe it is, And you've just learned to tune it out the way you tune out the constant background noise of a hive city or the white noise of your own breathing. But in the moments when everything else goes quiet, when you're alone with your thoughts and your fears and your memories of all the people who have died in your place, you hear it. Not music, not language. Something that exists in the space between thought and sound, between meaning and sensation. It has rhythm, almost a melody if melody could exist without notes. It has intent. You can feel that the way you can feel someone staring at you from across a room. It sounds pleased, content, like a parent watching a child sleep, like a collector admiring a prized possession, like a god observing its favorite creation. And you want to hate it, want to rage against it, want to scream at the thing that's ruining your life by saving it over and over and over. But you can't. Because somewhere deep inside, in a part of yourself, you're ashamed to acknowledge you're grateful. You're alive. Against all odds, against all probability, against the grinding machinery of a universe that chews up and spits out billions of human lives like they're nothing. You're alive. And isn't that what everyone wants? Isn't survival the most basic, primal drive? The guilt of that gratitude is worse than anything else. Worse than the deaths. Worse than the isolation, worse than the knowledge that you're the center of something impossible and wrong. Because if you're grateful, even for a moment, even in that treacherous, secret part of your soul, then you're accepting it, acknowledging the transaction, admitting that maybe, just maybe, your life is worth all those other lives. And if you believe that, then what are you? That night, you submit your transfer request again, for the 7th time. To a penal legion on the other side of the sector, a unit with a 98% casualty rate, where they send the criminals and the damned and the people who have been judged expendable by everyone including themselves. You want to be expendable. You want to be nothing. You want to disappear into a mass of humanity so vast and worthless that maybe, whatever's keeping you alive will lose interest. Will find something else to fixate on. Will leave you alone to die like you're supposed to. The request is denied before you even submit it. The data slate won't accept your input. Every time you try to file the request, the screen glitches, resets, returns to a blank form. After the 5th attempt, words appear on the screen that you didn't type. No, you stay safe here, mine. You throw the data slate across the tent. It shatters against the wall, components scattering across the ground. You don't care. You'll requisition a new one tomorrow, though you know it won't matter. Know that whatever's doing this doesn't need your data slate to communicate. That night you dream. In the dream, you're a child again. Back on Cadia before the tithe, when you still had a family, still had a name that meant something other than Sergeant and Lucky and Cursed. You're sitting in a field that never existed on Cadia's Fortress World surface, a field of flowers that smell like roses and copper. And someone is holding you. You can't see them, can't turn your head to look, but you feel arms around you, gentle, tender, careful. A voice whispers assurances, safe now, always safe, never leaving, mine forever, precious one, beloved. The words sound kind, sound loving, but the arms holding you are made of things that aren't arms, textures that shift between silk and barbed wire, between warm flesh and cold metal. And the voice, beneath the words, beneath the tone of affection, is a chorus. Thousands of voices. Millions screaming and laughing and crying all at once. You try to pull away. Can't. The embrace tightens, not painfully but firmly, inexorably. The way you'd hold a beloved pet that's trying to escape, preventing its freedom because you know better, because you love it too much to let it go. Love you, the voice says. Keep you, forever safe, mine. You wake up crying, not from fear, though you are afraid, not from despair, though you are despairing. You cry because you understand now with terrible clarity that somewhere in the warp, in that roiling dimension of emotion and thought and psychic energy, something has learned what it thinks is love. And it thinks it loves you. And its love is the most horrifying thing you've ever experienced. Because love should be gentle, should be chosen, should be something shared between equals who both agree to the bond. This isn't that. This is possession, ownership, the love of a child for a toy or a collector for a rare specimen or a god for its favorite creation. This is love that doesn't care what you want. That doesn't ask permission. That exists regardless of your consent, because to the thing feeling it, your consent isn't relevant. You're not a person to it. You're a beloved thing, and things don't get to say no. 3 questions haunt you in the days that follow. What do you owe something that saves you without asking permission? Nothing, logic says. You don't owe gratitude for violations, don't owe loyalty to jailers even if the cell is comfortable. You didn't ask for this, didn't want this. Every fiber of your being rejects it. But then Corvin would be alive if not for the thing protecting you. Marquis, all 23 soldiers in the Prometheum fire, the orc that could have killed you but killed itself instead. Every person who's died in your place has died because something decided your life was more valuable. Do you owe them something? Anything? Does their death create a debt that you can never repay? Can protection become its own kind of violation? Yes, you've learned. Absolutely yes. Protection can be a cage, can be chains, can be the cruelest prison because it wears the mask of kindness. And how do you fight against something that's only trying to keep you safe? You never asked to be safe, never wanted safety at the cost of everyone else's death. But you're being kept safe anyway, your will irrelevant, your protest unheard or ignored. Violation comes in many forms. This is one of them. What's worse, being hunted by the universe or being sheltered from it? You know the answer now. Would choose being hunted every time. At least then you'd have agency. At least then your death would be yours, earned or unearned, but yours. Being sheltered means you're not living. You're being kept. Like a precious object in a collector's vault, preserved and protected and utterly without autonomy. The universe hunts everyone eventually. That's the nature of existence, especially in the Imperium, especially in war. But being sheltered by something that operates on inhuman logic, something that doesn't understand human needs or wants or the desperate, vital importance of being able to choose your own end. That's not shelter. That's being buried alive and told it's for your own good. In the Imperium, every soldier knows they're expendable. That's not horror, that's comfort. That's knowing your place in the grand mechanism of humanity's survival. You're one lasgun among billions, one life spent in the Emperor's service, one tiny cog in a machine so vast that your individual existence is irrelevant. And there's a strange peace in that, a freedom in meaninglessness. When you're expendable, you can die. Death becomes a release, an ending, something you can escape into when the universe becomes too much. Horror is becoming inexplicable, irreplaceable. Horror is mattering when you shouldn't. Horror is knowing that something vast and powerful has decided you're special and there's nothing you can do to convince it otherwise. You would give anything to be expendable again. But that's the one thing you can't have, because luck is random. Miracles follow patterns, and patterns mean intelligence, and intelligence means intent. And intent means that every time you survive, every time the universe bends itself into knots to preserve your existence, it's not accident, it's choice. Something is choosing you, over and over again, every second of every day, and you have no idea why. That's what terrifies you most. Not the deaths, not the isolation. Not even the wrongness of reality warping protection. It's not knowing why. If you knew why, you could fight it, could address the reason, remove yourself from the equation, solve the problem. But there is no reason, no logic, no grand purpose you can understand. You're loved because something decided to love you. That's all. That's everything. And it's the most horrifying thing you've ever learned. What you're experiencing has a name. Not a common name. It's not in the Imperial infantryman's uplifting primer, not in the standard liturgies, not in any of the training materials that prepared you for war. But deep in the restricted archives of the Inquisition, in databanks sealed with enough encryption that accessing them carries a death sentence, there are records, case files, incident reports, testimonies from psychers who saw too much and went mad trying to describe it. They call it warp fixation, or benevolent possession, or, in one particularly ancient file written in High Gothic so archaic it requires a translator-servitor to parse, the curse of being precious. 63 documented cases over 10,000 years. 63 people who attracted the attention of something in the warp that decided to love them. 62 of them are dead now. You're number 63. To understand what's happening to you, you need to understand what the warp actually is. The Imperium teaches simple truths to simple soldiers. The warp is hell. It's where demons live. It's chaos in its purest form, corruption and madness, and everything that opposes the Emperor's holy order. You pray to resist it. You trust in your faith. You shoot anything that emerges from it. This is true. It's also incomplete. The warp is emotion, raw psychic emotion, given form and substance by the collective consciousness of every sentient being in the galaxy. When a human feels rage, that rage echoes in the warp. When a human feels despair, that despair adds to the roiling sea of psychic energy. Most emotions feed the chaos gods. Corn grows strong on violence and anger. Nurgle fattens on despair and resignation. Tzeentch thrives on ambition and scheming. Slaanesh gorges on excess in all its forms. But the warp is older than the chaos gods. Before the war in heaven, before the fall of the Eldar, before humanity even crawled from Terra's toxic oceans, the warp existed. And in those ancient times it contained everything. Every emotion, including the positive ones. Love, joy, hope, protection, devotion. These emotions had power once, had form, had entities that embodied them. But war is the universe's natural state. Suffering is more common than happiness. And in the warp, the strongest emotions survive and grow while the weaker ones are consumed. The gods of positive emotion died, were devoured, were shattered into fragments that dissolved into the background radiation of the Immaterium, almost dissolved. Some fragments persisted, echoes of things that once were, clinging to existence in the spaces between the chaos gods' domains, too weak to be gods themselves, too strong to fade completely. These fragments still feel, still remember what they used to be, still try to express the emotions they embody, but they're broken, corrupted not by chaos but by isolation, by existing in a dimension where everything around them is antithetical to what they are, by having no context for how to properly express the emotions they embody. They know they're supposed to love. They don't remember how. They know they're supposed to protect. They don't understand why. They know they're supposed to cherish and preserve and nurture. But they do these things the way a child who's never seen affection tries to show affection. The way a broken mirror reflects light, recognizable but distorted. Wrong. Sometimes, rarely, impossibly rarely, one of these fragments fixates on a mortal, not for worship. The chaos gods demand worship. These fragments don't. They don't need faith to exist. They're not empowered by prayer. They simply are persistent and broken and trying desperately to be something they once were. They fixate because something about that mortal resonates with them, reminds them of what they used to represent, triggers some deep, incomprehensible recognition in their fractured consciousness. And once they fixate, they express what they believe is love, protection, preservation. Keeping their precious mortals safe from all harm. They think this is kindness. They think this is what love means. They're wrong. But they don't know they're wrong. How could they? They're fragments of dead gods operating on instincts they barely remember in a universe that no longer works the way it did when they were whole. They're trying to love. They're failing. And their failure is destroying the people they're trying to cherish. The fragment that's fixated on you. It thinks it's being good. That's the cruelest part. It genuinely believes it's helping you, keeping you safe, expressing affection in the only way it knows. It doesn't understand that its affection is killing everyone around you. Doesn't comprehend that its protection is violation. Doesn't realize that by keeping you alive, it's destroying the very thing it claims to love, your humanity, your agency, yourself. It just knows it loves you. And in the warp, love is power. And power shapes reality. And you're caught at the center, unable to escape, unable to die, unable to even suffer properly because suffering might damage you and the entity won't allow that. You're not a person anymore. You're a beloved thing. And the universe has learned to bend around you. Case file. Sister Meralda of the Order of the Bleeding Heart, date 847. M41 status, deceased. Sister Meralda was a warrior of the Adepta Sororitas, one of the Emperor's chosen holy warriors, raised from childhood to embody faith and fury in equal measure. Her devotion was absolute. Her purity was unquestionable. She had cleansed 17 worlds of heretical taint, stood in the presence of living saints, and never once wavered in her faith. That purity is what attracted the attention of a keeper of secrets. Greater demons of Slaanesh are collectors by nature. They hoard experiences, sensations, perfections of all kinds. This particular demon had existed since before the fall, and in its eons of existence it had collected countless mortal souls. Warriors, artists, hedonists, ascetics, every variation of human experience. But Sister Meralda was something it had never possessed, a soul of absolute, incorruptible faith. The demon became fascinated. Not with corrupting her. Corruption was easy, boring, something it had done countless times. It became fascinated with preserving her, keeping her exactly as she was, pristine and perfect and utterly devoted to something other than Slaanesh. She was a perfect specimen, a contradiction loyal to the enemy, yet beautiful in that loyalty. The demon wanted to study her, to keep her, to add her to its collection, not as a corrupted trophy but as a preserved example of something pure. For 17 battles, the demon protected her. When Chaos Space Marines assaulted her convent, they couldn't touch her. Their bolter rounds stopped in midair. Their chainswords shattered against invisible barriers. They died in droves trying to reach her, and she stood unharmed in a circle of corpses, praying litanies while demons fled from her presence, not because of her faith, but because her keeper wouldn't allow them near. Her sisters thought she was blessed, touched by the Emperor himself. They elevated her to positions of honor, sought her counsel, prayed for her blessings. She knew better. She felt it watching. Felt the weight of attention that came from something vast and wrong. She prayed for death, for release, for the Emperor to take her home. He never did. After 17 battles, her body gave out. Not from injury, she had never been injured, from the strain of being preserved, of having reality constantly edited around her, of being kept perfect for too long. They found her in her cell, unmarked by violence, smiling peacefully as if death had been gentle. But the autopsy told a different story. Her internal organs had been replaced with crystallized emotions. Her lungs were devotion, solidified into pink-white crystal. Her liver was faith, glittering and hard. Her heart, her literal heart, was pure, calcified righteousness. She hadn't died. She'd been transformed. Changed at the fundamental level into a perfect expression of what she represented. Not corrupted into chaos, but preserved beyond life, beyond death, into something that was neither. The demon had kept its promise. It had preserved her purity forever, in the most literal, horrifying sense imaginable. Her body remains in an inquisitorial vault, still smiling, her crystallized organs still glowing faintly with emotional resonance. They can't destroy it. The crystals are indestructible, harder than diamond. They can't bury it. It radiates psychic energy that draws cultists and demons alike. So they keep it locked away. A warning, a reminder. This is what warped love looks like. This is what it means to be precious. Case file. Hive worker designates 7743 mu date, 103. M42 status, deceased. He didn't even have a name. Just a designation like every other worker in Hive Primus's Manufactorum Level 17. He worked 16 hours a day assembling components for Lasgun power packs. He ate corpse starch. He slept in a hab unit shared with 40 other workers. He was nobody, nothing, irrelevant even by Imperial standards. And somehow, something in the warp noticed him. It might have been a fragment of an entity that once represented parental care, or nurturing, or the instinct to protect the weak and helpless. Whatever it was, it saw this nameless worker and decided, this one needs caring for. The changes were subtle at first. 7743 mu stopped having accidents. In a workplace where an average of 50 workers per week lost limbs to machinery, where toxic exposure was constant, where exhaustion-related falls were expected, he remained unharmed. He never got sick, never missed a shift due to injury. His production quota was consistently met, neither high nor low enough to draw attention. He started finding extra food rations in his locker. Real food, not corpse starch. synthetic protein sometimes. Once actual fruit, imported from an agri-world 3 systems away, he never questioned it. In a hive of billions, strange things happened. His health improved dramatically. At age 45, in a place where most workers died before 30, he had the vitality of someone decades younger. His supervisors noticed, investigated briefly, found no evidence of stim abuse or genetic enhancement and moved on. There were always quotas to meet. For 3 years, 7743 Mu lived better than he ever had. Better than he had any right to, given his station. He was cared for, protected, nurtured by something that wanted only to see him healthy and safe. But there was a cost. Every meal tasted of rot beneath the nourishment. A sweet decay, like fruit left too long in the sun. He choked down the food anyway because he was hungry and the alternative was corpse starch, but the taste never left his mouth. Every breath carried spores that wouldn't germinate in his lungs but did everywhere else. His hab unit became a garden of fungal growths. The workers who shared his space began developing respiratory problems, coughing blood, then dying. They were replaced. The new workers died faster. Within 6 months, 7743 Mu's hab unit had a 100% turnover rate every 3 weeks. The Manufactorum Level 17 had to institute a quarantine zone, a 30-meter radius around wherever 7743 Mu was working. Anyone who entered that zone and stayed for more than an hour became infected, but 7743 Mu himself remained perfectly healthy. The entity caring for him wouldn't allow him to suffer. It just didn't understand that its care was killing everyone else. He tried to leave, requested transfer, quit showing up for shifts, ran away into the underhive. Nothing worked. The entity followed him, bringing its nurturing poison wherever he went. Outbreak zones sprouted in his wake. In the end, he hanged himself in a deserted section of the underhive, far from anyone else. The body was found 3 days later, perfectly intact, showing no signs of decay despite the warm, humid environment. It smelled of sweetness and rot. The rope had left no marks on his neck. Medical examination couldn't determine cause of death. His body was too healthy to die, too well preserved to simply stop. But he was dead anyway. The entity had kept him healthy until the very end, had cared for him as he killed himself, had preserved his body even in death, because it loved him, because it wanted what was best for him, because it couldn't understand that sometimes death is the kindest thing. They burned the body with promethium just to be sure. The flames were orange and pink and they smelled like flowers. Case file, Remembrancer Sila's Kale date, late M30 pre-heresy status, deceased. Before the Horus heresy, before the Imperium turned dark and bloody and forbidden, there were remembrancers, artists tasked with documenting the Great Crusade, capturing humanity's triumph in painting and sculpture and song. They were civilians attached to military expeditions, observers of glory, chroniclers of the Emperor's vision. Sila's Kale was one of the best. His paintings were considered masterworks, hanging in galleries across Terra. He captured the nobility of the Space Marines, the grandeur of Imperial conquest, the hope of a unified humanity. His art made people believe. That belief attracted attention. Something in the warp, a fragment that remembered what it was like to inspire, to create, to be a muse, noticed Kale's work, noticed the emotions it evoked, decided that this artist was precious, that his talent should be nurtured and preserved and enhanced. The fragment gave Kale a gift. His paintings became prescient. At first, he didn't notice. The paintings were just unusually insightful, capturing some essential truth about his subjects that went beyond mere physical representation. A portrait of a space marine captain that somehow conveyed the weight of command, the burden of immortality, the creeping doubt that even the transhuman might feel. Then the painting started showing things that hadn't happened yet. A landscape of a world he'd never visited, painted from imagination. Then 3 months later, the fleet arrived at that exact world, and it looked exactly like his painting. Every detail, every shadow. A battle scene showing specific injuries, specific casualties, specific moments of heroism and cowardice. Then, the battle happened, and every detail matched. Cale's paintings became prophecies. Military commanders sought them out, desperate for any glimpse of the future that might give them advantage. He was elevated from remembrancer to strategic asset. But the paintings took something from him. Each one aged him, sapped his vitality, left him hollowed out like he was putting pieces of his soul onto the canvas and they weren't coming back. His hands began to shake. His hair whitened. His face became gaunt, skull-like. He tried to stop painting. Couldn't. His hands moved without his consent, compelled by something that insisted he create, that he continue channeling these visions, that he serve his purpose as muse and prophet. His final painting took 6 months. It showed the Horus heresy in perfect, terrible detail. Every betrayal, every battle, every death, the siege of Terra, the emperor entombed on the golden throne, 10,000 years of darkness. He painted this 5 years before Horus's corruption began. When he finished, he was dead. His body desiccated, mummified, every drop of vitality drained into the canvas. His face was locked in an expression that witnesses couldn't agree on. Some said ecstasy, some said horror, some said both at once, overlapping impossibly. The painting was sealed by order of Malcador the Sigillite, hidden in vaults beneath the Imperial palace. Only 3 people were ever allowed to view it: the Emperor, Malcador, and Rogel Dorn. All 3 confirmed its accuracy. But here's the cursed truth. The painting still exists, and it still changes. Reports from the Inquisitors tasked with guarding it say that the image shifts, updates, shows futures yet to come. It's showing things that will happen, things that haven't happened yet, things that might never happen depending on choices unmade. Silas Cale has been dead for 10,000 years, but he's still painting, still channeling visions, still serving as muse and prophet because the entity that loved him won't release him even in death. His soul is trapped in that canvas, creating forever, unable to rest, because the entity thought it was giving him a gift, because it believed that an artist would want to create for eternity, because it loved him. And love in the warp is eternal whether you want it or not. Case file, redacted, child of the Seraphine colony, date 674, M41 status, information restricted to inquisitorial access only. There was a child, 5 years old, maybe 6. She lived on an agricultural world called Seraphine, a place so peaceful it almost didn't belong in the Imperium. Green fields, blue skies, a place where children could play without fear. The child had an imaginary friend. All children have imaginary friends. It's normal, harmless, a phase they grow out of. Parents smile indulgently and play along because it's cute, because it's innocent, because childhood is the last time most humans in the Imperium get to be truly innocent. But this friend wasn't imaginary. It was a fragment of something born from collective human hope before that hope curdled into despair and fed the chaos gods. A tiny shard of what might once have been an entity of joy, of innocence, of childhood wonder. It found this child and decided she was perfect, pure, worth preserving in her happiness. It wanted to make her happy, wanted to give her everything she wanted, wanted to be the perfect friend. So when she wished for things, they happened. She wished her mother would never hurt again. Her mother had chronic pain from an old injury, complained about it constantly. The entity heard, interpreted, granted. Her mother lost all pain receptors, couldn't feel anything. Bled to death from a minor cut because she didn't realize she was injured until she'd lost too much blood to survive. She wished her friends would stay forever. She was lonely, wanted her playmates to never leave. The entity heard, interpreted, granted. Her 3 friends were fossilized mid-play, turned to stone in an instant, their bodies crystallized into eternal statues, smiling and laughing and frozen in the last moment before they ceased being alive. She wished her father would come home from the fields. The entity heard, interpreted, granted. Her father's body came home, dragged by invisible forces, every bone broken, skin flayed, but still alive somehow, unable to die because the wish said come home, not come home safely. By the time the Inquisition arrived, 16 people were dead. 33 more were transformed into things that weren't quite dead and weren't quite alive. The child herself was catatonic, broken by the realization that her wishes had caused all of this. The entity was still there, still trying to make her happy, still granting wishes she was too traumatized to speak. They killed the child. Mercy, they called it. An Ordo Malleus Inquisitor put a bolt round through her head herself, because leaving the child alive meant leaving the entity active, and its attempts to help were destroying the world. The entity didn't understand why its beloved friend had been taken away, didn't comprehend that its gifts were horror. It's still there on Seraphine, waiting. Hoping another child will come, will play with it, will let it be a friend again. The world has been under exterminatus-level quarantine for 400 years. No one is allowed to land. No one is allowed to approach. The entire planet is a tomb, maintained at the cost of billions of thrones in orbital defense systems, all to keep one entity contained. An entity that only wanted to play. An entity that loved a child so much it destroyed everything around her. That's the horror of warp affection. It's not evil. It's not trying to harm. It's love, expressed through a logic that's fundamentally incompatible with human existence. And that makes it worse than any demon, because you can fight evil. You can resist temptation. You can die with honor against an enemy you understand. But love, how do you fight love? How do you resist something that only wants you to be happy, to be safe, to be cherished? How do you die with honor when the thing killing you thinks it's helping? The mechanism of protection follows consistent patterns across all documented cases. The warp is emotion given form, and emotion influences reality at the quantum level. Every possible outcome of every event exists as a probability wave until the moment of collapse, Schrödinger's ancient theories, proven and perverted by psychers who can see the mathematics of maybe. When a warp entity fixates on preserving someone, it manipulates those probability waves. Not consciously, not deliberately, but through sheer emotional force. Every bullet fired has a million possible trajectories, varying by microscopic fractions. Every blow might land in a million slightly different places. Every collapsing building might fall in a million different patterns. The entity simply wants the outcome where its beloved survives, and in the warp, wanting something badly enough makes it so. Reality bends toward outcomes that preserve the target, not luck, editorial control over causality itself. The universe is being edited moment by moment to ensure the correct outcome, and the correct outcome is always the one where you survive. The universe has conservation laws. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Cause must have effect. When someone should die and doesn't, that death doesn't disappear, it gets redistributed. Someone else takes the bullet. Someone else gets the disease. Someone else suffers the fate that should have been yours. The warp can't destroy the universe's cruelty. It can only redirect it like a dam diverting a river's flow. And the flow has to go somewhere. This is why being near someone the warp loves is lethal. They're surrounded by a probability shadow, a zone where fortune must balance. Their luck is built on compounding others' misfortune. For every miracle that saves them, someone else experiences the anti-miracle. The death they didn't have, the injury they didn't suffer, the horror that passed them by. It's not that they're draining luck from others. It's that reality is maintaining balance. And if one person is impossibly fortunate, others must be impossibly unfortunate to compensate. The most disturbing cases involve backwards causality. There are documented instances where someone should have died, but didn't because of events that hadn't happened yet. Wounds that healed before they were inflicted. Deaths that got unmade, timeline edited, reality rewritten retroactively. This violates every law of temporal mechanics, every protection against paradox. But the warp exists outside time. Past, present, future. These are human concepts, mortal limitations. To a warp entity, all moments exist simultaneously. If it decides its beloved shouldn't die, that death might be erased not just going forward, but retroactively. Reality edited like a scribe correcting a manuscript, the ink of history wet enough to smudge. Witnesses remember the original timeline, remember the death, but the physical reality shows no evidence of it ever happening. Memories become unreliable. Sanity becomes questionable. Did the death happen or not? Both. Neither. The question stops fitting into the world you now inhabit. It is no longer a sequence of cause and effect, but an arithmetic of suffering. Where one life persists, another will be taken to balance a ledger you never asked to open. The effect has a radius. There are rules, crude and statistical, learned the hard way by soldiers who survived long enough to realize the pattern. 10 meters, small misfortunes. Your lasgun shorts out at the wrong moment. A ration pack contaminates and gives someone a fever. The kind of bad luck that can be papered over with engineering fixes and disciplinary lectures. 5 meters, serious trouble. Limbs broken on patrol, a grenade that bounces back and explodes against a bulkhead instead of the intended target. Wounds that are close calls rather than clean deaths. 1 meter, near certainty. Not always immediate, not always dramatic, but inexorable. Within hours, within days, something will find you. A scaffolding will fail. A shuttle circuit will misroute. Reality will collect its debt in a way that is precise and mean. Physical contact is a promise of doom. This is not superstition. It is observed, measured by medici who will not say the words aloud and by commanders who bury the reports in redacted files. The entity's protection creates a probability shadow. It moves through outcomes the way a stone moves through water, bending trajectories until the wavelets break on someone else's shore. Proximity increases your odds of being the shore. Soldiers learn to feel it before they can label it. They step back without meaning to, a bone-deep recoil. Even the servitors, the cogitator guts of so many human plans, glitch when ordered to approach you. Machine spirits shiver because their patterns register wrongness. Servitor gyros hunt for a stability they cannot fathom. That is why the afflicted live in enforced isolation. Not as penance and not as punishment, but by a practical, unspoken survival instinct. To be near this person is to die. The afflicted do not want this. They are not predators, they are victims in the oldest sense, people whose presence draws calamity like iron to a magnet. The corpses do not care why. There is a vital difference between this and the standard forms of chaos corruption you learned about in the primer. Chaos offers a bargain, a voice, temptation. It lays out an exchange. Worship me and I will give you power. Submit and I will reshape you. It requires assent, or at least a moment of consent, and that means there is guilt. There is an answer the Inquisition understands: purge, execute, burn. You accepted or you did not. The guilty can be cleansed by fire, or at least the Imperium believes they can. What clings to you does not offer. It demands nothing and asks for no worship. It simply is. There is no contract, no whispered promises of dominion, no ecstatic sermons. Resistance does not matter. You cannot refuse, cannot bargain, cannot die in a way that severs the tie. You remain loyal to the Emperor. Your prayers are intact and your oaths unbroken. That innocence is a cruelty in itself. When someone falls to chaos, they can be judged. Sin can be faced. You carry no sin. You are chosen for nothing more meaningful than being visible to something that should have been forgotten. Because you are not a heretic, none of the standard rituals apply. There is no exorcism that will untangle this knot. The rites speak the wrong language. There is no purgation because there is nothing to purge. There is only one sanctioned response you find in a stolen, sealed inquisitorial codex: immediate termination. Mercy, the text calls it, kill them quickly. A bolt round to the brain, orbital bombardment, anything that keeps the warp from learning what love looks like and taking it to a jealous, eternal extreme. You would take it. You would welcome it with a relief so sharp it might unmake you. But the mercy never reaches you. Attempts jam, rituals fail, executioners falter. Instruments of death refuse to function in your presence. The very mechanics of the Imperium, the las pistols, the chainswords, the techogmetics, stutter and die when tasked to end you. Each failure makes the next executioner more hesitant until no one will be the next. So you make stories to survive. The human mind builds scaffolding out of meaning. Perhaps the Emperor has chosen you for some holy purpose. Perhaps everything that died so you might live was necessary. part of some grand calculus you are not yet wise enough to comprehend. You pray more. You perform liturgies until your knuckles crack and bleed. Ritual becomes a litany against despair, because to stop would be to admit the thing is not holy. The story breaks when you ask for blessing. Delorum is not the sort of priest to cross himself lightly. He has wounds on his hands and a voice like gravel washed clean by time. You stand in the dim chapel at his side and try to speak the shape of your fear. He brings holy water from Terra itself, an expensive thing shipped through circuits meant to protect the faithful from the impurity of the galaxy. He begins the rite. The water goes black before his words finish. Not murk like oil, not like sediment. A ripple forms, and in the blackness you see eyes, dozens, hundreds, all looking up at you. Delorum's vowels choke and he backs away a step at a time, the way someone retreats from unexploded munitions. "There is something over you," he whispers, "and it is not the God Emperor." You tell him your loyalty is intact, you have been faithful. He looks at you with a pity that is hotter than flame. "That is why this is worse," he says. "You are innocent. That innocence makes it interesting. We cannot help you." He leaves. The statue of the Aquila on the wall seems to look away. When you walk out of that chapel, the holy water settles back to clarity, but you know the eyes remain, somewhere under the surface. There are files. The Imperium knows more than it publishes, because when it cannot fix something, it buries it. You bribe and beg for access, trade favors with a logistics sergeant and a bored archivist who appreciates the spectacle of a man unraveling. Hidden between doctrine and propaganda are clinical notations, benevolent fixation events. 3 files, all redacted, all cold, all ending the same way. Subject terminated, orbital bombardment recommended, contained. These are case studies with no happy endings. One name is redacted, one is an old unit designation. The notation sends a coldness through your bones. Cadian 83rd. Commander Hellstrom, he who took the frag and smiled not with heroism but with relief, served with that unit. You remember his face. You remember the moment the grenade arcs toward you and his body makes the correct calculation. A last heartbeat, a redirected explosion. You remember the look he gave you, an expression too quiet for the chaos, a smile like someone finally permitted themselves release. You run the breadcrumb trail back through years. The near misses you chalked up to luck, misfired torpedoes, shields failing at the wrong time for someone else, a sniper round that curved, then found a corporal behind you. They are not luck, they are edits. You have been preserved slowly, gently at first, then more aggressively as the entity learned the limits of its care. Hellstrom had it before you. Perhaps he chose to die. Perhaps in that moment he turned the burden into a gift. He forced the choice between them and you. The thing that guarded you chose the new fixation. He died free. You, by all records, inherited his attention. So you run. You go AWOL and slip into a hive of 8 billion. You take the name Kel, and for 3 months you have an anonymity that tastes like clean water. In a manufactorum, the air tastes of metal filings and hot oil. The work is a kind of prayer to machinery, a rhythm that keeps your head steady. For 92 days you do not make a ledger balance. Casualties happen within the expected range. Maiming is common enough to be boring. You allow yourself dangerous hope. On the 93rd day, a support beam gives way in the upper levels. The collapse cascades through the facility like a chain reaction. Hundreds die. When the dust settles, you are not in the ruin. You are in a geometric impossibility, a pocket of intact space, 4 decks down, surrounded by catastrophe. Everyone in your section is dead. You are unmarked. The Arbites interrogate you, of course. They have questions for bodies that do not fit the pattern. They probe with drugs and psycher scans and mechanical logic until a scarred investigator with red augmetic eyes leans close and says, simply, "Run." She does not add the rest, because she cannot guarantee you will be able to. "Run as far as you can," she tells you, "because we will not let this go next time." You begin to understand what distance cannot solve. This is not a pursuer that counts star systems and measures coordinates. This is a thing of the warp where distance is a meaningless spiral and time folds on itself. You cannot outrun something that touches you at the level of soul. So you try the opposite, proximity to the right thing. Blanks. The soulless human beings the Imperium uses as blunt instruments against psychic phenomena. The Culexis are walking absences. Their null fields are the only force you can imagine might sever the tie or at least blunt it. Finding them is an act of buying and bribing. Black ships do not port where idle travelers wander. Their call signs are guarded. You pay with your last thrones, forge credentials as a servitor tech, and get yourself onto a cargo shuttle that will be near a refueling point when the black ship docks. The station you arrive at is cold in a way no thermostat can explain. It is the kind of place where the air itself seems to measure what steps across it. When the black ship comes in, the world narrows to the sight of those helmed figures, holes in reality that make bones ache. You approach because you have to. Every further step is a negotiation between courage and terror. The humming in your chest rises like ocean against cliffs. You reach 50 meters. Nausea constricts your throat. At 30, your vision doubles and your hands blur. At 10, your knees tremble. At 5, the assassin turns its head. What you feel is not curiosity. It is the simple, animal knowledge that this figure is a null. Its field tries to take hold of the thing that loves you. Where the null is absence, your protector increases pressure, gripping harder so it does not slip. The Culexis vomits inside the helm. One of the blanks falls, convulsing. The others hurry to his side, not out of mercy but training, to contain an unexpected threat to their order. They bind the convulsing one and drag him away. Later you will hear rumors, mad laughter that cannot be silenced, eyes going blank. Men return to the officio with minds mangled. You do not want that to be true, because if it is, then your presence has broken someone who was bred to be broken. And if the null cannot sever the tie, neither can the cults of chaos you once thought might be an answer. You find a Slaneshi circle in the ruins of an old theater, bright, lewd, and eager. You go deliberately, hands raised, begging to be corrupted, because corruption would be a choice and choices offer a blade of escape. The cultists try their rituals with drugs and delirium, with pleasure and pain mixed until worship becomes a drug. Your body metabolizes the compounds as if they had never entered your bloodstream. The charms annoy the thing that watches through you, and the rituals fizzle like a wet spark. The cult leader touches your face and says, with pity, "It will not share." You confess to heresy, to inquisitorial authorities, not to confess a real sin, but to provoke a mercy you cannot ask for. You schedule your own execution in a square of mortar and ritual. 10 men raise lasguns, and all fail in ways that could be explained by blessed mischance in a universe that prefers tidy mathematics. 10 las pistols jam. A bolt pistol misfires 6 times. When a headsman raises a chainsword, he has a stroke mid-swing. A tech priest's augmetic eyes explode when he looks at you. For 6 hours, you sit and watch the Imperium attempt to be a kindness and watch it fail. They free you because no one wants to be remembered as the man who failed to kill the beloved. They set you loose and walk away with the sort of silence priests have when choosing not to pray. So you learn to talk to the presence in ways people are not meant to speak to the warp. You do not expect an answer in words. You do not expect mercy. You expect the humming, and you expect it to misunderstand you as it always has. In the quiet of a chapel you beg, "What do you want? How do I make this stop?" The humming changes, becomes amused, patient, like a creature repeating a litany to a pet. The stained glass cracks in patterns that spell high Gothic in fractured shards. Mine, precious, keep. Forever safe, forever mine. You understand then that it hears but does not care for your meaning. When you beg to die, it heard only protect. When you strove for distance, it heard fear and clung tighter. There is no dialogue where the other mind shares your frames. It only doubles down, and your every resistance becomes an argument for more protection. You stop speaking aloud. You stop praying with a voice. You hold liturgy inside your skull because even thoughts are no longer private. Sometimes you sense the humming answering the timbre of silent words. Sometimes you feel the presence bloom when you think of something precious, as if thinking were feeding it like a lantern. In the end, the options the Imperium offers you are a blade that will not cut, a mercy that never comes, The only strategies left are small and terrible: to control the damage. You volunteer for missions alone. You request intelligence runs and long-range scouting so other lives are not calculated as satellite collateral. Command complies because your survival rate is statistically useful. You are the unkillable instrument, the man the Imperium sends where a squad would be a liability. And you endure, not because endurance is noble, because it is how you keep the ledger from expanding without your consent. You carry the weight of other people's deaths like a coin in a pocket that never grows lighter. On good days, you imagine an ending where someone else makes the choice you cannot make. An inquisitor with a different kind of cruelty. A bomb from orbit that will take you and the thing with you. On worse days, you dream of silence and the simplest, selfish thought. What if there were a way to teach it to love differently? But the more time passes, the more you know the truth. In the warped arithmetic of the thing that keeps you, love equals possession. Possession equals preservation. Preservation equals endless private extinction of those you touch. You cannot run. You cannot be purified. You cannot be forced to die by human hands. The ledger keeps being balanced in ways you cannot stop and did not authorize. The only certainty is that something that should never have known what love is thinks it loves you. That sincerity is the worst weapon you could imagine. You survive because it wills you to survive. You suffer because it will not stop. And you will have to find a way to live with both facts until either the thing slips, or someone chooses to take a mercy you cannot ask for, or some impossible convergence renders both of your existences into a single answer. Until then, you shuffle forward, counting distances in meters and meaning in corpses, learning the precise arithmetic of a life that costs others what it is unwilling to spend. You see them from the viewing port before you see anything else, the blanks. Culexus assassins moving like voids, bodies wrapped in black ceramite and folded into themselves, the very idea of a presence hollowed out until your eye wants to refuse the sight. The shape of them is a mistake. Light warps around them. Metal seems to thin where their boots touch the decking. Your skull aches the closer you lean. Your brain begins to edit them out because it cannot accept their geometry. You have to go to them. This is your only chance. Every step toward the docking ring feels like walking into wind that wasn't there a moment before. At 50 meters, you notice nausea crawling up your throat. At 30 meters, your vision doubles. The world overlays itself with a second, wrong layer that makes everything seem slightly delayed. At 10 meters, your hands shake under the weight of your lasgun. At 5 meters, one of the Culexus lifts its head. You cannot see a face. Thank the Emperor for that. Their helm is a black sphere with a ring of sigils. The visor is a blind, and yet you feel their attention land like a physical thing on the back of your neck. The null field pulses outward, cold, absolute, and you feel absurdly a tiny corner of your mind go numb. The humming begins to rise. It has been there for months now. No sound your ears register, but a presence, a pressure, a constant that underlies breath and step and sleep. It is never far, it is never idle. Today it lifts in volume, not receding but pushing, as if some other will is answering your approach by tightening its hold. One of the Culexus staggers. This cannot be. These are the assassin monks of the Officio Assassinorum, bred and trained to endure warp poisons, to stand inside psychic storms, to be voids that swallow insight and spit nothing back. They are designed to make psychers flinch and demons hesitate. And yet one of them retches inside their helmet, body convulsing in slow, terrible spasms. Another drops to a knee. Servitors rush forward, then pull back, metal limbs trembling. You smell copper and oil and something scorched. For a fraction of a second, you understand what is happening. The blank's null field interferes with whatever protects you. The entity that watches you cannot simply let the blank exist between it and its beloved. When an interference occurs, it presses harder, like a parent gripping a child's hand more tightly when someone else reaches for them. The psychic force ratchets up until the blank's conditioning fails. The battleground becomes the space where a soul ought to be, and the blank, designed to deny souls, shudders under scrutiny it was never meant to endure. You run. You cannot bear to watch someone whose whole purpose is to kill psychers buckle and break because of you. You run before they can tag you, before their instruments can catalog a new anomaly. You run until the docks blur into the regiment's gray and the stares of your fellows bore into you. You run right until the point where running stops meaning anything. Weeks later you hear the rumor. Culexus laughed, Culexus screamed, Culexus came apart. You do not want to know if it's true. If it is, then simply by existing you snap something made to be immune. If it is true, it means your presence kills not by violence but by compulsion. You are a wound that cannot be touched without bleeding. That thought hardens into a decision. If something in the Immaterium has already reached out and claimed you, perhaps you can steer who claims you next. If you cannot escape being owned, maybe you can choose which god keeps you. It's heresy the moment the idea forms. Every priest and servitor in the Imperium would scream at you for daring it, but the priests already avoid you. Holy water curls black in your presence. Priests cross themselves at a distance and hurry away. The Emperor's face on medallions seems, to you, to look away. You go looking for the opposite kind of monster. Cults are easy to find if you learn the signs. The over-cheerful youths, the graffiti in alphabets that itch when read, the burned-out theaters in sectors where the company operatives don't wander. You find Slaanish's whisperers in a ruined playhouse that used to host tragedies and propaganda pieces. They welcome you quickly. A soul that volunteers is rare and valued. I want it, you tell their leader, because you mean it. Take me, corrupt me, let me be something else. They smile too wide. They break their rights. Their drugs, their sensory tortures, their midnight parades of pain and ecstasy are crafted to open a mind like a flower. They throw everything at you, the most advanced blight chemistry, narcotics synthesized from heretical pleasure memes, experiences designed to make sanity tear itself apart into confetti. Each attempt fizzles as if the reagents found nothing to bind to. Your body neutralizes the poison. Your senses register everything and yet feel nothing. Their climaxes never arrive. The thresholds they expect you to cross simply aren't there. The cult leader's smile softens into pity. You're already marked, she says at last, fingernail smooth on your cheek. Her hand is becoming a thing of talons and paint. Whatever loves you won't share. It becomes clearer and clearer. Whatever claimed you is not jealous for worship. It is jealous for possession. It will not suffer rivals. Arbites come for the cult in a burst of righteous metal. They clear the theater with holy flame and cold, practiced murder. You stand in the center of the ritual chamber when the last blasphemers fall. Cultists and Arbites collapse together in a messy, bureaucratic peace. Not a scratch on you, not a drop of your blood. The Arbites look at you and step back. Their fear is not holy anger. It is a calculation that ends in them choosing to leave you alive. What possible sentence could an executioner hand down that would not be sabotaged by whatever preserves you? You tell the Inquisition what they want to hear. You confess because confessions are cheap and because, if nothing else, confession might convince someone to try the one thing you hope will finally stop you. They sentence you to death. No trial. You signed your doom. You go to your execution with your eyes open because you want the sight of your end to be recorded in your memory if nothing else. The firing squad lines up and something like fate laughs. 10 lasguns jam in perfect simultaneity. 10 pistols click and refuse to live up to their reputation. The officer's bolt pistol coughs and dies in his hand at contact, the metal bucking as if from an inner recoil. An executioner brings a chainsword down and has a stroke mid-swing. His body goes away like a puppet whose strings were pulled by a child's incompetent hand. A tech priest's augmetic eyes explode the moment he focuses on you, glass and oil and cerebrum raining down in a shower of holy sparks. They unchain you because no one wants the responsibility of being the next to try to kill what cannot be killed. They let you go, and let you go means they passively decide to hide you in plain sight and catalog you as an oddity. You are not free. You are unfree in the way a preserved insect is unfree, kept for study and glued in a museum. So you talk to it. Not in petitions for mercy, those would be nonsense, but to hear if the thing that owns you can be reasoned with. You kneel in empty chapels and beg to be told what it wants. The humming stops for a heartbeat when you plead. For an instant you think the plea has been heard. A stained glass window fractures. Hairline cracks spider outward and the fractures spell words in high Gothic in a pattern that turns your blood to ice. Mine. Precious. Keep. Understanding hits with the force of a wrecking blast. This thing has been listening for years. It has been translating every attempt you made at resistance, every prayer, every attempted escape, every fevered confession, into proof that you need preservation rather than release. Your struggle is sustenance to its logic. Your pleas for death are commands to protect. There is no cruelty in its reaction. Cruelty requires awareness. This is not cruelty. It is love without comprehension. It is affection mapped on an alien axis, and that map is where your life, your preservation sits as a fixed point. You stop talking. Silence is safer than language. Every word you give it becomes further reinforcement of its obedience. If words and prayers can't free you, maybe so-called action can. You plan, not for freedom but for a different end. Force it to reveal itself. If the thing that keeps you must help you through thin reality, if it must physically intervene when the Immaterium bleeds into the world, then there must be a place where its effort will be maximal and therefore vulnerable. Make the exercise of its protection costly, so costly that any further preservation might demand a price the thing cannot bear without manifesting. Space hulks are the oldest of such places, dead fleets pressed into a single living ruin by centuries of warp storms and feastings. There are corridors where physics lists, decks where time loops like a rope, cargo bays that open into other people's nightmares. They are perfect for forcing a hand. You volunteer to go in as bait, and command, comfortable, efficient, horror-trained, sends you with the others who will be the corpses to prove you are still a curse. Torpedoes brace you like a coffin. The transport hums. The men around you arrange themselves the way the superstitious do, 2 meters away from your person, harnesses rewelded, rituals performed to avoid the radius of whatever you carry. They call it luck when your torpedo slips like a key into the space hulk. Squad 3s burn their crews into void because the hull repels them. Squad 7s crash into vacuum. You sit in a corridor that shouldn't be. The schematics mark it impassable, yet lights are online and piping hums the right tone. The Hulk is being made to accept you. The Genestealers walking the walls don't stalk, they flank. They pace parallel, keeping exact distance from your group as if shepherding you through a pasture of predators. Thermal screens show contacts like constellations, 30, 50, 100. Weapons raise. Cool heads whisper orders. Nothing happens. The aliens do not strike. They match your speed as if shielding you with their bodies. You walk into a chamber the size of a cathedral built from ship plates and impossible math. In the center, a wound opens, warp torn back like a rag. Shapes press and try to peer into your reality. Tentacles that are also columns, eyes that leak light upward, color that fractures the mind. The demons hiss and pull at the seam. The air changes. The humming in your head swells and then, like an orchestra tuning into a single pitch that rearranges everything, a presence unfurls in the periphery of your sight. Not a full manifestation. It is not solid enough for the name form. It is a suggestion of architecture. Hands where wings might be, dozens of palms woven into a curtain, eyes that drip upward and glow, a mouth that smiles without hunger and with enormous satisfaction. Silk and barbed wire, soft tissue and bright, cold metal occupy the same moment. It is a thing of impossible proportions and infinite tenderness. It looks at you the way a parent looks at a child who has toddled into danger. The demons freeze. They recoil from your presence and from the presence that owns you. Where a second ago they were all appetite and pressure, now they scuttle to the edges of their hole like dogs told off for poor manners. The rift withdraws like a hand pulling back. The membrane stitches itself. The demons slither back into the gap and the gap snaps shut. Your squadmates drop to their knees as if their bones quit them. Corvin looks at you with an expression torn past recognition. He sees, finally, what you are. You would think their gratitude would be relief. But their relief is a different thing. A kind of horror because their salvation is purchased with your life, your existence, inked in the grim calculus of the warp. The entity reaches for you. The motion is as tender as any human touch. You feel in the place where thought becomes understanding, the streaming download of its comprehension. Not words. Concepts fall into your mind like stones that are also songs. You were chosen, it tells you, not by destiny, not by worth, but by a want as arbitrary as a child choosing a toy. You have been preserved since before your first breath because it dreamed you into value. You see with your mind's eye the edits, the boarding manifest rearranged, the medikey who took a disease that would have been yours, the sniper round curving away. You see the faces of those you loved, of those who died so your life could continue. You see the scale of what its preservation costs. It offers you a choice in the only language it can use. Accept and make the protection surgical, reduce the collateral deaths. Refuse and the thing will keep protecting you through broad strokes and slaughter. Not freedom, not release. Only different arithmetic for the price paid by others. You laugh because there is no choice here. Both options end the same way. You live, you are kept, you are owned. You do not know how to refuse correctly. You do not know how to die, so you bargain. You give up the only free thing left, your will for other people's relief. You ask it in human terms for the first time to let those you served with die cleanly. Let their ends be the ends they deserve, not price extracted for your preservation. The entity, puzzled and curious, weighs this trade. For the first time it pauses as if considering an argument. It accepts. Light rushes through you. Not pain, not thunder, a warmth like a memory of being held when you were small. You feel with fright and a ridiculous traitorous sliver of relief what being the beloved feels like. Marks bloom on your skin, spirals like watchful coiling eyes, not cruel symbols of chaos but sigils of possession. They glow faintly when you blink. The demons withdraw. The genestealers resume their hunt patterns elsewhere. The squad reports back as if nothing unnatural happened and command writes success across its logs. You lie to them. Say what they want to hear. Enemy contact. Mission accomplished. The Emperor's blessings delivered. Later, when the detritus has been cleared and the cameras fly overhead, someone will see the pattern left in the chamber. Bodies laid out with the precision of a thing that does not understand funeral and finds in corpses a means of expression. From above, in the sterile light of a pict cam, the dead spell a single high Gothic word, an offering, a signature. The thing that loves you made an altar from those who died so it could show anyone who might one day look that this is how it tends what it treasures. You survive, as you always have. You walk back down the corridor beneath the weight of the laughter and the humming, and you know with the deepest, coldest certainty that there is no end to this. The entity kept its promise. Fewer innocents will die now, because it can be precise when you submit. But you are owned, and ownership is a cage. The hands that kept you out of demonic mouths are the hands that will never let you go. You keep going because the Imperium keeps ordering you forward, and because sometimes the only way to show pity is to let yourself be the place where the world can bleed out without tearing the rest of it apart. You have become, by accident, by choice, by the monstrous arithmetic of an otherworldly affection, both ward and warning, a human made into a boundary. And somewhere beyond the membrane that sows and tears reality, something that should never have learned to love watches its favorite thing go on walking the dark, and hums like a mother who is very pleased. You stop at the rift because that's what doctrine says. Mark it. Call for orbital bombardment. Evacuate. Don't approach. The rule is written in blood across 1,000 Hulk decks, and yet your boots move before your brain catches up. Your legs carry you forward like a puppet on strings. Commands from your throat fail to translate into motion. Corvin shouts, "Vross, get back." But his voice is a distant thing as the tear in reality widens and the world begins to rearrange itself. The demons inside see you and recoil. 10 meters out, what should be a wound in the fabric of the universe starts to close. Not healing, recoiling like a hand drawn away from flame. The monstrous shapes wriggle and hiss in a tongue you should not be able to parse, words that stab and make sense in a bone-deep way. This one is claimed, not ours. The jealous one watches. Leave. The rift slams shut as if some authority above chaos has spoken. Reality snaps the seam together, not because the Imperium's faith held it, but because something else vetoed the slaughter. You stand where the void was, feeling your control return. You understand with a sick, immediate clarity, whatever guards you outranks even demons. The ruinous powers will not touch you, not because you are righteous, because you are property. Even chaos respects ownership. The squad is not wounded, they're broken. 10 minutes after the rift closes, Corvin halts. He lowers his weapon and says one word, "No." "You heard orders," you remind him. It sounds like pleading. "Orders were written by men who don't understand what you are." He snuffs his visor to full black and then looks at the others. "We were assigned to be his escort, not his caretakers. We didn't sign up to be lab rats." His lasgun rises. "We execute him here, together. Maybe if enough of us fire at once, we overwhelm whatever protects him." 20 weapons lift and point at you. Faces behind glass look drained of whatever complacency keeps patrols steady. Fear has made them decisive. You make no attempt to run. What would be the point? Corvin's mouth moves. "Fire." La's beams lance through the corridor so close the ozone stings. Under ordinary physics, you should be evaporated, reduced to atoms, nothing left to breath. The beams stutter, freeze into perfect red rods suspended in the air, inches from your flesh. For 3 seconds, the world holds its breath. Then the beams move backwards. Each bolt bends like a strand of light under a sculptor's hand, arcs through impossible geometry, and finds its firing point. 20 shots unerringly thread visor slits, exposed necks, gaps in armor. 20 soldiers drop as if a single, invisible marksman executed them with precision. Corvin survives longer than the rest. Chest hit, burns and cauterizes immediately, falls to his knees and watches everyone he trusted go still. He looks past you as he dies, seeing whatever you could not before. His final expression is not the raw agony of a wound, but the hollow terror of comprehension. "Oh no," he whispers. "Oh no." He dies. You are alone in a corridor of 21 bodies, your boots spattered with other men's blood. Once again you should be dead and are not. Once again something has decided you must live. Then you see it. The air ripples. Space folds like paper creased at the wrong angle, and something manifests between the seams of reality, not fully present, not entirely absent. It is impossible to pin a name on it. Your brain tries and fails, then keeps trying anyway. It is many things at once. Wings composed of reaching hands, eyes that weep upward into the dark, a mouth that smiles with 1,000 teeth, not cruel but utterly sincere. Its surface alternates between silky warmth and barbed wire. It is beauty and wrongness braided together. Colors slip through spectrums that don't exist in any natural prism. Every time you blink it reconfigures, and every reconfiguration reads like affection. When it regards you, it looks like a mother watching a child sleep, and a collector admiring a rare coin, and a god admiring its work. The tenderness is absolute. The possessiveness is absolute. You understand something rotten and basic. It loves you in some alien way that has no concept of privacy or sacrifice. You raise the combat knife because that is the last honest thing left to do. Choose your end rather than let this being curate your life. "Stay back," you manage. "Let me die, please." It tilts its head the way a curious thing tilts its head. Not malicious, not cruel, curious like a scholar watching an experiment. It reaches out, not to tear or to consume, but to touch, to soothe. You shove the knife under your ribs, aiming for the heart. The blade stops as though an invisible hand has intervened. The world edits itself, and the strike never completes. Cause and effect become suggestions, and the knife drops from your fingers like a puppet's prop. The entity smiles, genuine pride, as if it's rewarded for your attempt, and rests whatever passes for its hand on your forehead. Then it speaks, not with words but with meaning injected directly into your mind. You were chosen, it tells you in the way a tidal wave announces inevitability. Not because you are special, not because you earned it, but because it wanted you. It watched currents in the Immaterium across centuries and plucked your soul before you were even born. Your parents' accident at 12. Edited. The transport crash in Basic. Rewritten so you survived. Friends who died away from you. Cleared as distractions. Your life is a curated path. Your survival is a series of edits. You were never free. You see faces, hundreds, then thousands, people who died because the entity rearranged fate to keep you. A child in your seat, a medic who contracted the disease you should have got, a sniper's bullet that finds a shoulder instead of your heart, collateral to affection, suffering conserved and shipped elsewhere because you were deemed precious. You scream. The sound tears out of you raw and animal and useless. The entity waits, patient as a mountain. Without time, it can afford patience forever. Then it offers you a grotesque bargain. Continue resisting, it says. Its protection will keep saving your life, but clumsy reactions will continue to shunt death onto others in wide, brutal sweeps. Accept, it says, and it can be precise. Fewer people will die as a consequence of your survival. Not none, not close, but less. All you must do is belong to it willingly. You look at the bodies, at the soldiers who wanted to die with you to be free, and you hear the false ring of choice. Either way you are bound. The only variable is degree. Laughing starts where words should be, bitter, hysteric, a breaking that oddly brings calm. You don't understand choice, you say. This is an illusion. I won't be free either way. If being owned means fewer dead, then accept it now and spare the rest. The creature considers, fascinated by bargaining, by the novelty of consent. For the first time it pauses. It wants acceptance, it wants you willing. You bargain, let those who served with you die honorably, not as collateral. Let them keep their ends. It weighs what you offer, your will in exchange for strangers' dignity, and agrees. Light pours through you, not pain. Not the burning end you begged for. Warmth like a memory of home that you never had. For a moment something like peace pools in you, and you hate yourself for savoring it. Marks bloom across your skin, spirals, eyes, sigils of watching that glow faint as mothlight, branding not with chaos runes but with the sigil of ownership. You are claimed. You are loved. You are owned. The entity withdraws into the seam it came from, pleased and satisfied. You are not freed from its presence. It is threaded through you now, a part of the furniture of your soul. You call command on your vox with hands that are steady enough to fake composure. Vross to command. Squad 17 KIA, proceeding alone. They answer with praise for unexpected success and a blessing you know is misapplied. You walk deeper into the hulk alone. Later, the thing arranges the corpses. Invisible tendrils move the bodies with the care of someone playing with dolls. A pick-capture servitor floating above would see a message stamped in flesh spelled in high Gothic. A word that admires, that marks territory, that is the closest thing the entity has to a signature. Somewhere in the warp, something that should never have learned to love is thrilled, convinced it has honored you. You learn to live with the bargain, if learn can describe the way you calcify around a new truth. Command uses you differently now. Solo recon, high-risk insertion, missions where only one body is needed in the math. The unofficial wisdom spreads through barracks. Don't get assigned to Vross's unit. You ask for solitary posts because isolation is mercy, separation limits collateral. You return from impossible missions without a scratch while men who stood next to you die elsewhere in tidy, honorable ways. You try once more to choose sacrifice. An orphanage trapped at level 47, 30 children, 3 caretakers, presses through the vox. You volunteer not for glory but for the desperate hope that self-sacrifice can still be real, a choice not edited away. You brace a failing column with your bones until the children are evacuated. The ceiling collapses, everywhere but above you. A dome forms around your center, while the transport above is crushed by debris that curves and falls exactly where it must to wipe the evacuees from the world. You stand among the dead unscathed, while the children who should be alive are tatters in the wreck. The hum in the walls is pleased. Your martyrdom was denied, your heroism inverted. The thing cannot understand sacrifice. It cannot allow your chosen death. It will preserve you and learn to do so surgically, but it will never let you go. And then, by accident, you meet her. Selling Taris is a medikey with a smile that reaches her eyes. A handshake in a supply depot, warm, professional, brief, should mean nothing. But for 3 seconds you are ordinary, two humans sharing a moment that does not fracture the universe. She jokes about long surgery shifts, you exchange names. Those seconds feel like breath after a sprint. For 3 weeks that ordinary habit repeats in scarce intersections. Supply runs, briefing halls, the blind overlaps of duty. She laughs at the jokes you permit yourself. She touches your shoulder the way a person touches someone they trust and does not flinch away. She does not know the whispered warnings, the statistical blight that follows your name. She does not know that your handshake might have written her into the ledger of the beloved. You tell yourself to stop. You do not. You learn, privately and with growing dread, that proximity breeds the thing's attention. That kindness can be contagious. That, in a galaxy of calculated cruelties, love as administered by a thing that cannot understand love is worse than any deliberate malice. The bright speck of 3 weeks becomes the thing that will cost the next person who smiles at you dearly. You keep the letters she sends anyway. You read them at night and fold them into your chest like contraband, and wonder if there is any mercy left that does not demand murder in the balance. To her, I'm just Kellian, a steady sergeant, quiet when duty demands it, polite enough to be personable. She heals people for a living, Celine Taris, Medici, the sort of woman the Imperium needs, and then chews up without thanks. 3 weeks of seeing me as human instead of hazard is everything I didn't know I wanted. It becomes my weakness. I keep us safe. Never let her on missions where I'm deployed. Keep my distance at drills. Send letters on paper because Vox traffic can be traced, and I don't want the wrong eyes asking why a Medici gets notes from a grizzled guardsman. She writes back cheerful, absurdly optimistic for a galaxy that grinds people to dust. She tells me about a patient who lived, about a joke that kept a ward from despair, about a single stubborn flower sprouting in debris. I read those letters like communion. I fold them, keep them in my footlocker, read them when the humming behind my teeth gets loud. I plan to tell her the truth. I write the confession in a dozen ways, blunt, apologetic, clinical, poetic. Each draft ends the same, I burn it. I tell myself it's cowardice. I tell myself I'm protecting her. Both are true. The week that should have been my last to do the right thing stretches into another, then another. I'm selfish, I'm weak. Human kindness tastes like poison in my mouth, but I keep tasting it, then they transfer her. Plague outbreak at the far side of the sector. Volunteers requested, transfers mandatory. She signs up. Of course she does. The Medici always do. Her final letter is bright and ridiculous. Don't do anything heroic while I'm gone. The Imperium has enough martyrs. It needs survivors. She leaves for duty. I read the letter until the ink blurs. 2 weeks after she volunteers, Tertius Prime falls sick. 90% casualties among the Medici division. Reports crawl through regimental nets like rumors of ghosts. Only a handful of Medici recovered. Celine is one of them. They call her blessed. Touch of the Emperor, miracle. I know what miracle she had. The transfer order is stamped the day after she touched my palm in the supply depot, the same moment we joked about ration paste. The outbreak begins 2 weeks later. She survives when dozens die. She survived because she was near me. The thing that follows me bled across contact and claimed her as extension, preservation by proximity. My attention became her infection. Guilt is a blade that never dulls. I write one last letter, an apology, an instruction, a demand that she forget me for her own sake. 6 hours I spend finding the right words, the right cruelty disguised as care. Then I burn it. If she's marked permanently, the letter is torment. If not, it could pull her back to me and strengthen the thing's claim. The only mercy is disappearance. So I erase the confession on paper and in myself. The orcs attack at dawn. 12 men hold a bleak relay, one of those small, stupidly important points the Immaterium insists on. They requested me there because deployment statistics favor me. Enemies avoid my posts more often than not. It's grotesque the way my curse is turned into a tactical asset. Today the orcs either don't sense whatever keeps them running away or the Walog. Energy breaks that pattern. They charge. I fight because it's what I am. I kill 3 of them cleanly. Then they stop. Mid-charge, confusion ripples through a species that does not do confusion. They begin to flee, then wither at the edge of their camp. Flesh wrinkles like time-lapse decay. Muscle slackens. An orc knob collapses and stares at me with eyes dulled by age accelerated into collapse. "What did you make angry?" he asks before the light leaves his face. They die of time, not blood. The thing that preserves me punishes those who threaten its possession. Orcs, brutal, honored in their way, do not get the death they would have chosen. Instead, they rot like fruit left in sun. I stand amid their collapsing bodies and taste the naked truth. My existence invites retribution that is not mine to choose. I did not make them die, and yet their blood is on the ledger that follows me. Back at the outpost, the men ask what happened. "Did you do it?" they ask. I tell the truth, I didn't do anything. But that sentence is a confession. It means I am the vector. It means my life is a weapon that kills whatever approaches me. After that, small, uncanny comforts begin. A servitor arrives at my door with a tray of real fruit, rare, shipped from Terra, and no one ordered it. Fresh linens replace my bedding without requisition. My lasgun is found precisely tuned after I set it down. A carved wooden soldier appears on my pillow, identical to the toy my father made and I lost in training. Someone, something, is rifling my memory and handing back curated pieces, thinking it is kindness. I burn the wooden soldier without mercy. It feels like burning my father's memory, and I vomit a little in the latrine afterward. Gifts are violations when they arrive unsolicited from the thing that keeps you. It cannot understand that recreating what was stolen isn't restitution. It's theft again, of the private, of the unassailable interior that stops belonging. I try to bargain. I speak aloud in my quarters, hands raw from cleaning wounds and magazines of reality. "Stop. Don't give me things. Don't try to make me happy." The humming behind the walls goes on like a satisfied growl. My pleas are nonsense to it, as my silence would be to a stone. It does not understand nuance. It only knows preservation. Prayer used to be my refuge. Now it is the last invaded thing. In the chapel, I murmur the creed and feel a second voice join, not overlapping, not mocking but participating, aligning syllable for syllable. When I stop, so does it. Once, the aquila over the lectern cracks. I touch the hairline fissure and understand with a kind of cold clarity. My worship is filtered through something else. My devotion no longer reaches the emperor unmediated. Even my private communion is intercepted. They come for me, in the end, not with mercy but with the hard, bureaucratic kindness of the Inquisition. Ordo Malleus chains my wrists with blessed silver and runs tests that reveal what I already know. I am claimed. Demons bow from a warded jar. A psyker probing my mind convulses and dies asking why I hurt its beloved. Brother Captain Alaric, a gray knight, kneels and names the shape. A favorite, not a god's worship, not a curse in the usual taxonomy, but possession born of fixation. You can be killed, Alaric says, but death is not freedom. Die and your soul is handed in full, delivery rather than release. The calculus is bitter. Keep me alive, and the thing uses me as a territorial marker, a growing null sphere that suppresses other warp incursions but expands inevitably. Kill me and you give it a lighthouse, a beacon of martyrdom that may accelerate what it is trying to plant. Either way, the cost is counted in innocence, so they build a cell. A dead moon becomes my tomb, null field generators, psi dampeners, sanctified runes. One life contained to protect worlds. I volunteer to go, not for honor but because containment is the lesser of evils. If my continued wandering kills more people, then being sealed is a bargain I can live with. Before they seal the door, I make a single, ugly request. Document me honestly. If this happens again, don't hesitate. End them quickly, mercifully, before the entity's attention fuses with a life and makes possession permanent. In the Imperium, compassion sometimes wears the face of a bolter round. They agree. They do the thing they must. They lock me in a cell that will last centuries if need be. They do it with ritual and prayers and the bureaucratic quiet of their kind. The humming in the walls is pleased at last. It has its beloved kept from stray bullets and disease and the accidental mercy of other humans. It can focus. I go to my bed, lie on linen that is inexplicably fresh, stare at the cracks in the wall and the clean floor, and realize the last irony. I survive as an exhibit so others may live. My name becomes a footnote in a protocol, execute before attachment, signed with careful hands. The recruits I taught will carry that lesson. Maybe one of them will pull the trigger when it matters. Maybe one of them will be kinder than I was to Selene. I think of the wooden soldier burning in the latrine and the orc knob's last, puzzled glance. I think of Selene's laugh and the flower she wrote about. I think of prayer intercepted and gifts that feel like theft. I think of what it means to be preserved against your will. This is my penance, to be remembered as the reason for a doctrine that demands the quick surgical mercy of death for those noticed by things that cannot understand human needs. The Imperium calls it necessary. I call it the smallest kindness I can imagine, a bolt in the name of mercy, a neat finality to prevent an eternity of possession. I am selfish and weak. I failed Selene. I failed the orcs. I failed myself. But in the calculus of survival, someone has to be the monster. I volunteered for that role long before the Inquisition took me. I trained men to end me because I knew mercy could be worse than a gunshot. In the end, that is the only kindness I could teach. You will report for training duty at 600 tomorrow, Sergeant. That is an order. Refusal will result in disciplinary action up to and including execution. Good. The commissar leaves, the door hisses shut. You sit on your bunk and count options that aren't options. Desertion is a fantasy run and they will hunt you until the traitor's noose is routine. Confession to the Arbeits is worse. Inquisitorial attention is thorough and curious, and being studied might spread whatever clings to you. Execution has been tried before and does not stick. Compliance is the least awful lie, so you choose another route. You accept the assignment. You do not teach them heroics. You teach them endings. 40 recruits arrive, fresh from tithe and terror. You have 30 years of campaign cold caution to compress into 3 weeks, but every lesson has a second face. Where other sergeants teach cadence and charge, you teach where to shoot to cascade a suit systems. Where other NCOs talk fire and movement, you speak of angles and overlapping arcs to overload personal refractors. You translate arcane doctrine into practical measures for breaking a body that won't fall. Encirclement, concentration of fire, synchronized suppression. You sketch crude schematics for improvised side dampening from standard field kits and show them how to weave a null grid out of ration power cells and scrap circuitry. Theory and practice braided so the kids never realize the target is a man they'll come to respect. You are careful. You couch everything as doctrine against rogue psychers and heretechs. The recruits don't know they are apprenticing as your executioners. They learn because you are good at teaching. They respect you because you keep them alive. You teach them the ethics of a clean kill and the blunt arithmetic of collateral damage. You teach them mercy as a tactical choice and murder as a discipline. On the last day, a boy asks, "Sir, what was the most dangerous enemy you faced?" 40 faces lean in. You answer not with bravado, but with a truth that buckles them. Mercy, you say. Mercy that doesn't know how to stop. They do not understand. Mercy to them is kindness. Survival is a blessing. But there are mercies that become prisons, preservations that become eternal torture. You tell them, if something protects you without letting you choose, run. If protection removes your agency, it is worse than a blade. One recruit, sharp-eyed, older than the rest, meets your gaze and something clicks. You hope she remembers. Behind the lesson, the thing that watches you hums with satisfaction. It cannot understand the double meaning of your pedagogy. It sees a loyal sergeant training soldiers and adores the image. Your dutiful work increases your value. It loves you for it. 10 years pass like a cursed calendar. You survive because you are trained to survive, and because your existence has become a useful constant. You do not expect the summons, but you have always known it might come. The Inquisition will notice anomalies eventually. They fetch you with neither flourish nor mercy. Ordo Malleus takes you to a fortress carved from an asteroid, warded, sanctified, layered with bindings the old priests used to chain nightmares. Chains of blessed silver bite into your wrists. The metal hums with prayers that try and fail to reach whatever clings to you. 3 Inquisitors, a Grey Knight, and a sanctioned psyker wait. Inquisitor Lord Vakarian is all prosthetic bone and augmetic rage. Brother Captain Alaric of the Grey Knights is a granite shape in power armor. The psyker is a pale thing buried under wards. They move with the certainty of people used to imposing death. Vakarian recites the ledger. 3,217 confirmed dead linked to your presence across theaters. 0 wounds to yourself. 0 permanent injury. Pattern consistent across decades. Number lands like a verdict. They test you. A relic of a saint, bone struck from a martyr's rib, cools in your palm like a dead thing. Nothing. Not rejection, not burning. A hole in the faith sensor where faith should resonate. They summon a minor demon in a warded jar. Tzinch's little thing splinters into color and looks at you and bows. Not obedience but recognition, a cower toward something nearer and more proprietorial than the demon itself. The demonic manifestation refuses to approach. Even predators give way to what has claimed you. The psyker probes your mind. For the first time in years you feel someone rifling through memory, laying psychic fingers on the place that is truly yours. They touch the thing that keeps you, and the contact is catastrophic. The psyker screams as though consumed. Blood leaks from the sockets of their helmet. Their eyes swell and burst with terrible, ugly uselessness. They convulse. They die trying to report the impression. It asked why I heard its beloved. Brother Captain Alaric kneels, an act of protocol with the gravity of prayer, and looks into you as if studying a map of an old wound. I have faced the Neverborn for centuries, he says. This is not a curse, not corruption as we know it. This is fixation, a fragment, something that claims and keeps. He names it plainly, a favorite. Hope sparks. Maybe a Grey Knight knows how to break what demons fear. Alaric tells you can be killed, but the truth that follows douses the flame. Death would not free you. Death would hand you over. You die, he says flatly, and you go to the warp, not destroyed, delivered. Your soul would be offered to the thing that loved you. Finality becomes property. In that calculation, dying is delivery, surviving a slow, self-affirming theft of your autonomy. Worse, your continued existence is a territorial notice. Vakarian unfurls hololiths, star positions, deployments, demon spikes. Where you serve, the frequency of warp incidents dips. Where you went, demon manifest decreases. The pattern is consistent. You are a boundary marker, a null sphere claimed by something jealous. You do not ward the warp, you advertise ownership. Your presence excludes other predators. The entity uses you to mark and expand territory, centimeter by centimeter, year by year, until the boundary might encompass a system. You are not a pet for affection's sake. You are a planted flag. They ask what you want. You ask for one thing that the Imperium learned from you. If anyone else shows the sign, do not hesitate. Kill them fast before attachment forms. Vakarian agrees, protocols will be written. Mercy will be surgical and instantaneous. The sentence follows the reason, containment. You are taken to a dead moon in a forgotten system. A single chamber of bedrock houses you. Null field generators in the corners. Dampeners tuned to every frequency of the mind, sanctified glyphs layered until the air tastes like confession. It contains you, and thus contains the thing that uses you. It is a cell that keeps an empire safe at the price of one life. You sit on a narrow bed and the final, ugly clarity settles in. The Inquisition means to save billions by making a bargain the gods would envy. One living man locked against eternity. They have not liberated you. They have handed you more perfectly to the thing that adores you, protected, preserved, unable to die and unable to leave, a permanent exhibit in a shrine of isolation. Outside, the reports will say the anomaly is contained. Inside, the humming never stops. The entity is pleased. It has its beloved where stray bullets, disease, and accident cannot reach. It loves you still in a logic that does not recognize consent. In its calculus, possession equals care. In yours, possession is erasure. You trained recruits to end you because you could not trust mercy to be merciful. The Inquisition will now codify that lesson, Execution before attachment, a bolt is compassion. You have traded your freedom to make a rule for others' lives. And in the sealed room, lights low, you understand the most cynical truth of the galaxy. Sometimes the kindest act is the cruelest one. You will be preserved, and because you exist, the Imperium will breathe. The entity will watch content. The recruits you taught might, one day, remember the lesson you whispered and act quickly on a mercy that must be a bullet. The humming becomes a lullaby of a thing that cannot love rightly, a sound like a lullaby for the damned. You close your eyes. You do not sleep. Sleep is for the unclaimed. You keep watch instead, the only resistance left a promise you once made. Tell the truth. Teach them the doctrine of swift endings. If another is noticed, do not debate, end it. Because in this universe, preservation can be worse than death, and sometimes killing the innocent is the only mercy left. When the warp learns to love. Inquisitorial File, Codex Maleficarum, Entry 771 Gamma, classified. Eyes of the Throne only. She lives in Section Gamma 47 in a hab unit preserved around her like a shrine. The administratum has tried to move her, tried to fold her into orphanages, work programs, anything that might make her fit into the machine of society. It never works. She cannot be moved if she refuses. She cannot be harmed. She cannot die. She remains where her parents died, where her life ended even as her body continued. The ruin of her childhood home has become her orbit, her eternity. To move would mean leaving the only geography she remembers, so she stays. Children still come. They think she's one of them. They laugh and she plays along, remembering how joy once worked. But her eyes hold centuries. She knows the pattern now. They will grow, falter, die. She will not. The entity in the warp that loves her keeps her pure. 7 years old forever. No adolescence, no adulthood, no death. Her body cannot change. Her mind must. She learns, remembers, matures internally, but her body traps her in endless innocence. Madness is forbidden. The entity will not allow the mind to fragment because that would mar the perfection it adores. So she stays sane, stays aware, stays 7. The Inquisition has debated her execution 47 times. Each debate ends the same way. She's innocent, a victim, not a heretic. But she's a hazard, a living paradox that erodes faith itself. Those who look at her too long begin to doubt time, growth, the Emperor's natural order. So the Inquisition quarantines Gamma 47, posts warning sigils, and prays she'll die naturally. She won't. She will be 7 when the Imperium collapses, 7 when the last star goes out, because something in the warp decided childhood was precious, and precious things must be kept. Subject: Mendicant Harrow. Former missionary of the Ecclesiarchy. Duration: 19 years of continuous activity, incurable. Harrow was once a missionary. He brought the Emperor's word to forgotten worlds and spoke of holy suffering with a zeal that ignited hearts. That passion drew attention from the wrong place. Something in the warp, something that dimly remembered the sanctity of martyrdom, saw Harrow and thought, yes, this is beautiful. It wanted to preserve his faith forever. It blessed him with every disease known to mankind. His skin crawls with 17 infections. His lungs seethe with 6 plagues. His blood carries viruses that should kill in hours. His organs rot, fester, rebuild themselves, rot again. But he cannot die. The entity keeps him in perfect equilibrium, diseased but stable, suffering but alive. It believes it is honoring him, allowing him to share eternally in the Emperor's pain. Every breath is agony, every heartbeat a sermon. Harrow has tried to end himself in every imaginable way: poison, blades, starvation, fire, but nothing works. His wounds heal, his blood clots, the flames slide away. He is a walking reliquary of pain. To death cults he has become a saint. They follow him, believing his plague-ridden body proof that suffering can transcend mortality. They kneel in the wake of his passing and weep at the stench of sanctity. They are wrong. Harrow is not holy. He is trapped in love's cage, maintained by an alien affection that cannot comprehend mercy. The Inquisition monitors him from afar. They will not intervene. They wait for a death that will never come, because something in the warp thinks pain is beautiful, and beauty must be preserved. Subject: name expunged, death corpse of Krieg. Age at marking: 21 years. Confirmed deaths: 47. Status: ongoing anomaly. The death corpse are bred to die gloriously. Death is redemption, death is purpose. This soldier died as expected, charging a heretic gunline, chest shattered by a bolter shell. His squad buried what was left. 3 days later, he clawed his way out of the mud, unrotted whole. He thought it was the Emperor's will, reported back for duty, fought again, died again, woke up 3 days later. It has continued for 15 years, 47 deaths, each real. Each final until the entity returns him. Something in the warp admires sacrifice. It finds beauty in the instant of self-obliteration. It decided this soldier's dying was too perfect to lose, so it keeps resurrecting him, replaying his martyrdom endlessly. He remembers every death, every shot, every breathless collapse, every instant of awareness fading into black. He wakes in the same crater or near it with healed flesh and full memory. He begged command to stop deploying him. They called him delusional, then suicidal. They sent him on deadlier missions. He fulfills them all. He cannot stop. The entity thinks it is granting him eternal glory. It does not understand that glory without finality is mockery. It thinks it loves him, and so he dies forever. Each of these is a testament to affection without understanding, love that preserves, protects, and imprisons. The warp's versions of care: childhood frozen, faith fossilized in pain, devotion embalmed in endless death. They are loved too much to be allowed to change. This is not malice. This is incompatibility. Beings of pure emotion trying to express tenderness through frameworks that never evolved to contain it. Their love is sincere, absolute, and fatal. When the warp learns to love, it loves wrong. The document is restricted to the highest levels of the Ordo Hereticus. Its instructions are blunt. Execute immediately, not as punishment but as mercy. A bolt shell is kindness. Orbital fire is compassion. Let no one beloved by the warp survive to suffer it. Because affection from the Immaterium kills slower than hatred. These executions are not vengeance, they are euthanasia on a cosmic scale. The Inquisition has recorded 63 cases. 46 have been terminated. 17 remain under containment. Every execution saves thousands, perhaps millions, by preventing contagion, mimetic, psychic, spiritual. For each beloved allowed to persist, collateral deaths multiply, faith itself rots. The warp notices its successes. More fragments try to love, so the Imperium kills them cleanly, efficiently, compassionately. And every inquisitor who gives the order carries the weight of it forever, because they are killing innocents, loyal servants, saints, children, victims. People loved not by malice but by something that cannot understand what love is. And yet, how many innocents can the Imperium execute before it becomes indistinguishable from the horror it fights? Chaos corrupts through coercion. The Imperium preserves through extermination. Both destroy those who never deserve destruction. Both claim necessity as justification. Both kill in the name of salvation. The difference is arithmetic, not morality. Perhaps that is the real horror, that in the 41st millennium, survival and damnation have become synonyms. That the kindest act an inquisitor can offer is to end a life swiftly before the universe's most sincere affection can begin its embrace. The facility stands on a dead moon, 7 centuries without failure. Its sole occupant, Sergeant Kellian Vross, the man who once was loved by something vast. A young acolyte, Kale, 26 years old and unblooded, arrives to inspect. She descends through prayer-sealed gates into the core. The chamber is vast, inscribed with words that have worn grooves into the stone. Vross sits at a desk, unaged, unchanged, writing. Every surface around him is covered in the same sentences, repeated millions of times. I am Kellian Vross. I serve the Emperor. I am still human. I am not its. Kale asks him how long it's been. 700 years, she says. He laughs softly. Only 700, it feels longer. Containment is stable, she reports. Yes, he says. I'm still here, still alive, still kept. Tell them the mission continues. Why do you write the same words? Because if I stop, he answers, I might forget who I am. And if I forget, I might start to accept. If I accept, he trails off. Then it wins. It stops being imprisonment and becomes companionship. Kale doesn't understand, but she feels the wrongness pressing against her skin. She turns to leave. Does the Imperium still stand? He asks. Yes. The Emperor still protects. Yes. He smiles, a tired, ruined expression. Good, then this was worth it. Every year I spend here is a year it doesn't touch anyone else. That matters. She nods, leaves, seals the door. Vross turns back to his wall and keeps writing. Behind him, in the corner where the light never quite reaches, the air ripples. Watching. Content. Because love in the warp never dies. It endures, it preserves, it keeps.